I'm really just doing the video to check in with Texas and make sure you guys are good. You know what I mean? I want to make sure Texas is okay because with this whole ban of PornHub, I'm not sure how y'all reacting. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how y'all reacting, but you know, me being a men's mental health expert, I know this does impact men. You know, it impacts women as well too, because surprisingly more, there are a lot more women that watch porn than men. But I do want to break down the mental health component and why this ban on Pornhub, and specifically in Texas, can impact one's mental health. So you guys sit back, relax, and we're going to talk about it right now. What's going on, y'all? My name is Terrence, Stewart. I am your men's mental health expert, and I just probably wanted to do this video. I just thought it was kind of interesting that, Pornhub was banned in Texas. And I will say this much, just from a standpoint of being a men's mental health expert, me, I guess I'll give my personal opinion, then I'll give my, my overall opinion as well too. I don't condone pornography. Just first and foremost, I don't condone like watching porn and things of that nature. The issue with that for me, and even when I talk to my clients is, pornography is like gives you a false sense of of sexual reality and intimacy. Just point blank period. Like it gives you a false sense of sex, how to have sex, intimacy, and things of that nature. You know what I mean? So I don't condone it. I'm just giving that disclaimer, but I think it's important to talk about, especially when we talk about men's mental health and just mental health in general, because you'll be surprised again. A lot of women do watch pornography as well, so you'd be surprised. That's not the fellas watching pornography. Now, I think this was super important, and I'm just gonna kind of look at the article here, that there was a law that was passed in Texas that required Pornhub to give age verification prior to watching pornography. Now, Pornhub and like most things that require age verification, such as if you go to like a CBD site, you have like CBD gummies, there's like an age verification thing there. If you purchase firearms online or or paraphernalia that has to do with firearms, there's an age verification thing there. But the issue with this was more so that Texas passed the law that they wanted a little bit more thorough look at how to verify these ages, because typically with all sites, kind of like you click, you verify, you say, hey, are you over 18 or are you over 21? Also too, like if you're buying liquor online too, like if you're on like Total Wine Specs, or if you're somewhere like that, like you literally just click a button most of the time. Now, sometimes the issue is, people lie. People do lie about their age. And just to get the exact bill, the Texas House Bill 1181, HB 1181. That's the bill that they had. I know I'm not into politics. I'm a whole therapist and social worker, so sometimes looking at these bills and this stuff, it kind of throws me off. But anyway, right? So sometimes you have to verify your age a little bit better. I guess that's what the bill is requiring. Now, it's saying that, instead of just clicking like, hey, look, I'm over 18, I'm over 21, that they're requiring now that a government issued identification needs to be implemented in order to verify, your actual age. So you can no longer just click a button. So if you're in Texas and you try to go on Pornhub, I'm pretty sure like there's gonna be something where where you can't watch it because they didn't, I guess Pornhub didn't agree that you need to actually upload your ID or government issue ID, right? So what does all this have to do with like mental health? What does this all have to do with Pornhub, Texas Texas not being able to watch it, mental health, right? So as I was stating earlier, just in my opinion, and there's research behind it as well too, when we're talking about like even minors being exposed to like, sex and things of that nature, like that could be hazardous. You know why? Because many times, and just myself included, you know, I'm not gonna ever say I never watched porn before. I'll be lying if I told y'all that. I'll be totally lying if I said that I never watched it before. Because sometimes even when we talk about, like, you know, a lot about men's group, we talk about pornography a lot, and you know, it's interesting enough because when we do talk about it, especially, you know, watching it at such a young age, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I grew up in an era where, like, you know, internet was like just popping off, so it wasn't like this whole, like, you had it on your phone type of thing. Usually be like pictures, sometimes videos and things of that nature. You know, you have LimeWire back in the day, you know, all those different avenues. But the interesting thing is when I'm talking to men, especially in our men's groups, is that, you know, one question I always ask fellas is like, how did you actually, you know, learn how to have sex? You know, how did you learn how to have sex? You know, and a lot of times, you know, it's mainly like through pornography. You know, like that's how you learn how to have sex. So, you know, sometimes your parents can have that talk, like that birds and the bees or whatever talk you want to have. But typically, you know, it's sometimes just watching porn growing up and like, okay, this is how you have sex, right? So that's the part too, where sometimes, you know, that's your introduction to having sex instead of like, you know, talking to people, having sex education classes, talking to your parents about a little bit more in depth of like how sex works and things of that nature. It can distort the way you see sex and the way you develop intimacy. And especially at such a young age, when your brain's not fully developed and you have these perceptions on how to have sex, what intimacy is, what you feel like women may want, or specifically talk about men, like you feel like a woman may want, or, you know, things of that nature based on pornography, it's super distorted. You know, I always have this thing I say, like, hey, like if you are, you know, watching like the Fast and the Furious, right? Rest in peace of Paul Walker, right? You're watching the Fast and Furious and, you know, you look at it as a movie, right? Are you going to go in your car and actually do the same exact things they're doing in the movie? Are you? Probably not. And the reason why is because, you know, like, hey, that's pretty dangerous. Like, you know, it's stunts. Or maybe you just have in your mind, if you're actually smart enough, you have in your mind that it's not real. You know what I mean? You have in your mind that it's not real. Like, this is acting. There's stunt doubles. There's, you know, people that are hired actors. But, you know, all that stuff, right? Ironically enough, it's the same thing in pornography. Same thing in pornography. Like, you have actors simulating a real life event, you know? So again, when we talk about our mental health and our psyche, when our brains aren't all the way developed, when we have this perception of what sex is, and sometimes with men specifically, we tie sex into intimacy, it can be dangerous growing up. It can be super dangerous growing up. So even with the law where Texas passed, I'm not sure if this was one of the reasons why they wanted to pass. It was just because, like, hey, we need to, like, you know, I know Texas is a red state and they have their conservative. And, like, I live in Texas now. Like, I'll do a whole video on that another time. But just like, you know, I'm not sure if that was the whole component, because again, like, it is a red state, it's very conservative. But understanding too, like, there has to be some level of protection with the kids. You know what I mean? There has to be a level of protection with kids, especially being exposed to so many different things, you know, even just in our own society now, you know what I mean? So that's the mental health component, is just learning the intimacy part, like understanding like sex isn't intimacy, like understanding that, hey, like a girl may not want all the stuff you see, the roughhousing and all that other stuff. Like, you know, you see people being acting, you know what I mean? So even myself, that's something I had to really learn, just as far as like sex, intimacy, and things of that nature. Because again, like my first time I seen somebody have sex was watching pornography. It wasn't, you know, in real life, obviously, but you know, that's kind of how you learn. It's like, okay, like this is what I do, this is what I don't do. But in real life, if you're taking it that way, you have to really look and see, like, hey, these are actors. You know what I mean? These are actors simulating a real life event. So as far as the ban with the law in Texas, it's saying like there's like a lot of I'm kind of reading it off here right here, potentially biological addictiveness, which is real. Like porn addiction is super real, right? It's saying like weakness in the brain function, low self-esteem, body image. It's also talking about mental illnesses, increasing demand of prostitution, child exploitation, and child pornography. those are all like valid statements. Like you talk about like low self-esteem, body image, because again, you're watching people who are, you know, are actors essentially. You know, some may not be acting, but you know, that's a whole nother story. But if you're talking about pornography is having some type of sexual interaction and is being recorded for the pleasure of somebody else. Not for the pleasure of the people recording it, but for the pleasure of somebody else, because there's a whole business behind it. The addictiveness, porn addiction is real. You know, porn addiction is super real. Like that's something we don't talk about a lot. And, you know, there's a lot of shame around porn addiction as well, too. So, you know, addictiveness, and you talk about like certain parts of your brain, like having that addictive component can ruin relationships. It can ruin your own idea, again, like of intimacy. But there's a lot of harm in pornography just in general. Now, the harm doesn't, you know, we're talking about like age verification, but the harm doesn't only just come with, you know, just children. It comes with adults too. Like your brain could be fully developed and you can still develop an addiction. You know, just because like you're not a child doesn't mean you can't develop an addiction. So now I kind of want to see and can kind of conclude just in a bit, is this like appropriate? Is it appropriate for the government to intervene in this type of, you know, behavior, I guess you could? Because some people may say, hey, this is like freedom of speech. Some people may say, hey, I should be able to watch what I want to watch. But, you know, again, this is my opinion. I would love to hear from what you guys hear in the comments as well too. But just in my opinion, it's not really gonna help anything. You like literally having children watch pornography. Like, what does that do for our society? Like, how does that help their mental health? How does that help them develop healthier relationships in the future? You know, because a lot of times again, pornography isn't real, but it's also a form of instant gratification. You know, it's not meant to like be sustainable, right? But I will say the approach that they're taking with the pornography thing, especially like it being addictive, harmful for human brain development, weakening brain function. You know, I don't know if there's like actual studies on that for real, but there is studies on like your brain not being fully developed to like between the ages of 21 and 25. So like somebody being early exposed to that and just being able to click a button and say, hey, I am this age, and being able to watch it. Yeah. But I will say, on top of that, you know, PornHub is only one outlet. They're not like a monopoly of pornography. You know, they're not the monopoly of pornography. So, you know, there's other sites that people may go to that they may be able to access it to. But I will say this, if you are, whether if you're a child, if you're, you know, or an adult, pornography in general is not it, for real. Like, there's some points in which you have to develop your own idea of what intimacy is, and like your own idea of what sex is. You know, usually with your partner, you can't base your experience with somebody based on like watching something. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be like, oh, like she probably likes this, and you know, I'm gonna do this. Like, that's not it. You know what I mean? That's not it. I just thought it was kind of interesting to talk about it because, yeah, it's, you know, we don't talk about pornography enough, and we don't talk about porn addiction enough. We don't talk about children being exposed to pornography enough. But again, I appreciate y'all tapping in. Thank you guys for watching the video. My name is Terrence Stewart, licensed clinical social worker. I'm your men's mental health expert. And until next time, y'all take care. Peace.